I'd like to welcome you all to this meeting of Council. The meeting will be live streamed and recorded, and the voices and images of those participating in the meeting may be captured as part of this recording. Indigo Shire Council acknowledges the original custodians of these lands. The people of the rivers and the hills have walked these lands for thousands of years, as well as today, and we pay respect to the elders of the past and the present. As councillors, we have all taken an oath to carry out our duties in the best interests of the people of Indigo Shire and to do this in a fair and impartial manner. We are all committed to exercising the council's powers and functions to the best of our skills and judgment. Are there any apologies or leave of absence? None? Do we have any declarations of conflict of interest? Councillor Horn?
Yes, I do. I declare that I have a material conflict of interest with item 19.1, Indigo Community Access Committee application. I have a conflict as I have a personal relationship with the applicant.
Thank you, Councillor Horn. So we'll ask you to leave the room when we consider that item. We'll move now to open forum. We have two questions. I'll just check if either of those people are in the room. One question is on behalf of either Kelvin Granger or Dean Hurlston. Neither are present. And the second question is from Tiffany Ellis. She's also not present. I'm aware that Tiffany Ellis has been communicated with and might have received a point of contact.
We'll provide written responses to both of those afterwards.
So great. The written responses will be provided. Thank you. We'll move now to community and council achievements. And we've invited John Dermer along tonight, who's recently been recognised in the 2023 King's Birthday Honours. John Dermer was awarded an Order of Australia Medal from Yakandanda in recognition for service to the creative arts. Councillor Shepherd would like to say a few words before John. We'd like to invite you up to say a few words yourself.
Welcome, John, and also congratulations, and also send out a hello and congratulations to Shirley too, who can't be here tonight, but I know she's just an important person in this celebration as you. If I just give a bit of background from what I found about John, he was born and educated in Melbourne. He completed his ceramics degree and teaching qualifications at RMIT and spent the earlier part of his career based in Melbourne. In the early 1970s, he travelled extensively overseas and worked as an artist in residence at Wedgwood in the UK and USA. And he discovered the picturesque Yakandanda Valley in 1974 and made the decision to relocate. And at this time, he established the very famous in Yakandanda and beyond Kirby's Flat Pottery. His work can be found in the New Parliament House in Canberra, the Federal High Court Building, Powerhouse Museum, Sydney, Westerwald Museum, Germany, Wedgwood Museum, Barlaston, England, Bhutan Museum, Pennsylvania, USA, as well as national, state and regional galleries throughout Australia, together with many important private collections. And this is just a little quote I read. In reading Dermer's articles and interviews, one is struck by his commitment and passion, but also by his modesty, in a way that seems coherent with a life spent working with hands on earth and clay. Dermer conveys no sense of self-importance, much less pretension. Rather, it is clear that he is dedicated to the work, motivated by a love of honest form and beautiful design, and driven to explore, refine, and master his chosen art form. He intends that his work evolves naturally and honestly. I first came to John's work as a young person coming up from Melbourne, and I was introduced by my boyfriend then to his large and extensive family in Indigo Valley, and we ate off a huge setting of John Dermer plates. We had every single sort of thing you could have. I don't know, John, how big was that setting that they got from you? It was a 50 seating, and since both the parents have died, we've all got bits of that pottery and bits of those cups and plates and bowls throughout the whole family. We've all got some John Dermer from the would it be the early 1980s? 78. Okay. So that was my first introduction to John Dermer pottery. But of course, that was the more prosaic part of your work. You're, of course, famous for your beautiful pots and your and the work that you do and is displayed throughout the world. So if I could just now leave it to you, John, to tell us more about yourself. And again, I just want to say before we do move on, how exciting it is. I know when John received this award, everyone in Yakandanda was talking about it. We're very proud of the fact that John is part of our community, is such a famous person and has been there for such 56 years. You've been a potter. That's right. And a long time in Yakandanda. So congratulations and a well-deserved award. But we'd love to hear your response to this award.
Thank you very much, Di. There isn't a lot I want to say. Probably the most important thing about getting the award was that it gives some acknowledgement to ceramics, to pots in the mainstream of the arts. Whereas I'm still asked, what did I used to do? I was asked on Sunday, what did you used to do? You know, obviously what you're doing was a hobby. And I did actually was asked once by a gentleman, and I told him that just a couple of years ago, I told him I used to be a neurosurgeon and that I was very good with my hands. And then he looked at the award in German award, which was 10 years before, and he thought, I think he's having me on. But I just needed to acknowledge to him that a doctor isn't asked. A musician's not usually, I met a pianist or a violinist or even a painter, not asked what did you used to do. So the award from that point of view was very, very good. I'm just taking a little step with those my mentors in front of me who took bigger steps in having it acknowledged, which it is overseas as a mainstream of the arts. I was going to take the opportunity to talk about our road, but I thought that was a bit cheeky. Yeah, exactly. I don't know if it's illegal, but I got out there with my tractor today and donated some road base to our road. Sorry, am I allowed to do that? No. It had to be done anyway.
That's a commissioned work from you to us. We thank you very much for that. If there's anything else you'd like to say, John, or
but I'd just like to sincerely thank all you people for having me here to acknowledge it, and I really do appreciate that very, very much. Thank you.
We'd like to get a photo with you now, John, if you wouldn't mind. Perhaps you might like to come up here so we can get a photo with the whole room. Okay, so just once again, thank you again very much to John Dermer for attending tonight. Council sees it as a really important opportunity to provide a moment in our council meeting to acknowledge community achievements. Now we'll move to condolences. Do we have any condolence motions tonight? CEO?
Madam Mayor, with your permission, it's not normal for a CEO to move a condolence motion, so I'm hoping an authorised councillor will follow me on this. I'd like to acknowledge the passing of Ruth Parker, the pharmacist in Beechworth, who passed away some weeks ago now. Pharmacy is one of those important roles in town, especially smaller rural towns, where the community relies on their pharmacists for advice and all sorts of things. And I knew Ruth personally and knew that she was always caring, friendly, helpful, and I'm sure she would have provided a whole lot of advice and comfort and support for a whole range of people in Beechworth over the years that she's been there. And I particularly want to make mention of the COVID pandemic. I know that Ruth showed great leadership during that time and went over and above to make sure that she could personally vaccinate or make sure as many people were vaccinated as possible. And I think we found that Indigo Shire may have been one of the first shires in the region to reach 95% first vaccination, but one of the quickest. And I know that Ruth would have played a big part in that. So if I could just acknowledge her passing and also acknowledge the braveness of her son, Amish, who had the difficult task of alerting the community through the Beechworth community Facebook post on the same day about the passing of his mother, and he showed great courage and bravery in making that announcement.
Thank you, CEO. Councillor Gaffney?
Ruth was respected and loved by the entire Beechworth community. Ruth was recognised for her exceptional work by the Australian Patients Association and Pharmacy Guild of Australia last year with the award for the most outstanding pharmacist. She'll be sadly missed. I'd like to move a motion that a letter of condolence be sent to Ruth's family.
So we no longer need a motion for that, but we'll accept that from Councillor Gaffney. Is that correct? Yes? Yeah, so I think that Council would accept that. Great. Okay, we'll now move to item 8, which is confirmation of minutes from the previous meeting. The recommendation is that the minutes of the council meeting held on 27 June 2023, as published on council's website, be confirmed. Can I have somebody to move that? Moved Councillor Shepherd, seconded Councillor Gaffney. Put it to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item 9 is business arriving from previous minutes, and there are no reports. Item 10 is petitions, and there are also no reports. CEO, at this time, I think you've got an item to enter.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If I request the leave of council to accept an item of 8 urgent late business. The title of the report is the Chiltern Destination Place-Based Funding Application. The nature of the urgency is that we have a deadline of 1st of August for an application to be lodged, and we're asking council to consider that item before that item is lodged and propose that it be included in the agenda at item 12.2. I can have a motion to accept that business.
So could a councillor please move that motion? Moved Councillor Gaffney, seconded Councillor Croucher. All those in favour to enter that motion into the agenda? Carried unanimously. So just to reiterate, councillors, that item will appear as item 12.2. We'll now move on to planning and corporate services. Item 11.1, planning permit application PP 220008 Lower 9 Mile Road, Stanley. The item is for decision. The recommendation is that council resolve to issue a notice of decision to refuse a planning permit for the proposal to use and develop the land for a dwelling on Lot 1 on title plan 962100R, Lower 9 Mile Road, Stanley, on the following grounds. There are 4 different grounds set out with different caveats I will leave those to be read by councillors. Could I have someone to move that recommendation? Would anybody like to move that recommendation? Would you like to move it, Councillor Horn? So moved by Councillor Horn, seconded by Councillor Shepherd. Councillor Horn, would you like to speak to the refusal motion? You need to turn your microphone on.
This one has been rather a lengthy process, and there are about 12 reasons why it's not acceptable. So pretty plain, the decision has been made, and that we have to look at the recommendations of our staff on this matter.
Thank you, Councillor Horn. Councillor Shepherd, would you like to speak as seconder or reserve your right? You reserve your right. Would any other councillor like to speak to the recommendation? Councillor Tysell?
Yeah, I think the recommendation by council just highlights some of the difficulties we have with small allotments throughout the Shire. Most commonly with the use of agricultural land and or the non-use of agricultural land. I find it very difficult for a small allotment this size to meet that criteria in any way, space or form. And I, yeah, as such, don't support the current recommendation.
Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Croucher?
Does that mean I can speak against the motion? I'd like to speak against the motion. Residential development in rural areas is discouraged but not ruled out, and the application has met CFA requirements as being acceptable with bushfire assessment. The officers do not dispute that the effluent could be adequately dealt with by conditions, and the land is adequately accessed and infrastructure. And in my opinion, the lot is too small for farming and agriculture, and is therefore another one of these small lots that sits worthless within our farming zone.
Would any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Shepherd, you have a question?
Yeah, just a question about Stanley Township and the fact that we haven't been able to get that through because of the bushfire concerns. If you could, are you able to speak to that?
So yes, through the mayor.
Yep.
I don't have the dates in my mind at the moment, but there was a proposal to form a Stanley Township zone, which would allow for more uses and possibly some more development, depending on it is in a sensitive catchment area. So that's a concern, but it would at least allow for some more uses and possibly even development in the centre of Stanley. So that was tracking along reasonably well, and there were a number of community meetings, and I think we had some good alignment there. And that was before the last bushfire Royal Commission, and once the Royal Commission's findings were handed down, it derailed that process. And it was about the start, it was at the very start of the pandemic that the Minister's office wrote and said, with the pandemic on, we're clearing our schedule and we'll push this one off. So we understand it's still a priority of the Stanley community, and council does believe in it. So we've been working on that with the CFA, and we believe that there's a way forward with a reduced footprint for a township zone. So we're getting very close to being able to bring that back to council. I can't tell you the actual area, but I know that it's significantly reduced and aimed at having a more appropriate zoning for the shop and the pub and those sorts of areas in town, and then maybe a bit more. So that's where that one is up to. It is something that we have on the radar. In planning terms, though, there's a there's a definition where if something is seriously or genuinely considered, I don't remember the exact term, then it can be considered as part of a planning permit. But you know, a Stanley Township zone isn't to that stage where it would influence a decision on a planning permit at this stage, particularly because we don't have that footprint defined.
Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Gaffney?
A question. There were 4 submissions against this. What was the major reason for refusing the permit apart from it being in the farming zone?
Director Pinkerton?
Thank you, through you. The major reasons, so the report goes through the planning discussion and the planning thinking. The recommendation distills that into the most important ones. And so I think there's 9 planning policy sections that this application doesn't meet. So they're listed in their headings up there and then discussed further in the report. And then there's 3 decision guidelines that the application doesn't meet. And that's about the farming zone and the use of farming land for small lots, and then council's bushfire management overlay and the concern that this is not meeting those requirements of the planning scheme. And to be clear, that is, you know, it was mentioned before the CFA, so that's one perspective that's really important. And if the CFA don't approve something, then we would not proceed with that. But equally, the CFA have one perspective, and council is required to look at bushfire risk from council's perspective as well. So we need to make our own independent decision, and that's one of the reasons for recommending refusal.
One more question. What concerns me is that one of the submissions was that it would compromise of downstream water quality, particularly for agriculture, but probably even more so is sewerage, and in particular inaccuracies in the land capability assessment. I know that when the township plan was being formed years ago, that there was certainly a major issue with sewerage and septic tanks close to the water table, etc. Are you able to give some information in regard to the sewerage and inaccuracies in the land capability assessment?
Thank you, through the Mayor. This was discussed at length as part of the application process. We are quite mindful that the lot is quite small, so that makes it sometimes challenging for septic, and it is very close to a waterway. In the end, the decision was that wasn't going to be an identified reason for refusal, and the decision behind that was that it would be dealt with through conditions. So the septic system that would be used if an application was approved, and any deficiencies that we had in the land capability assessment would be conditioned as part of the permit, and then that would be a further hurdle that they would have to meet, yeah, if a permit was approved. So it was a bit line ball, but we did come to the decision that with the new septic systems that could be a condition of the permit.
Did you want to speak to the motion as well, Councillor? No. Councillor Shepherd, you reserved your right. Would you like to speak?
I think we've had a long time to look at this, and nothing has changed for me over those times that it's been put aside for the next meeting, in that there are just too many recommendations from the planning department where they don't approve. So the planning policy framework around settlement, environmental risks and amenity, natural resource management, settlement, Stanley, bushfire planning planning, protection of agricultural land and rural residential land. But the main thing being that I think where our planning department is very concerned around the bushfire overlay, and it being in farming zones. So both of those things, I think, we're taking them on. I just cannot support this planning permit and agree with the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Shepherd. Councillor Horn, would you like to sum up? Okay, so I'll put the recommendation again, just noting for councillors that the recommendation is that council resolve to issue a notice of decision to refuse a planning permit for the proposal to use and develop the land for a dwelling in Lower 9 Mile Road, Stanley. All those in favour? Against? So those in favour is Councillor Horn, Gaffney, Price, Shepherd. Those against is Councillor Croucher and Tysell. The motion for refusal is carried. We'll move now to item 11.2, the planning permit application PP 220311, 354 Moodamere Road, Norrong. The recommendation is that council, having caused notice of planning application PP 220311 to be given under section 52 of the Planning and Environment Act 1987, and having considered all matters under section 60 of the Planning and Environment Act 1987, determines to issue a notice of decision to refuse to grant a planning permit for planning permit application PP 220311 for the use of the land for a dwelling on Crown Allotment 7, Section D, Parish of Norrong, for the following reasons. There's 3 reasons with 3 paragraphs separately attached. I'll ask, would a councillor like to move that motion? Moved Councillor Gaffney, seconded Councillor Tysell. Councillor Gaffney, would you like to speak to the motion?
This is a planning permit on an allotment in the farming zone of 8.08 hectares. And the plan is to have a feedlot with up to 100 head of cattle. The property is almost abutting the Murray River and is close proximity to Lake Moodamere. I agree with the recommendation.
Councillor Tysell, would you like to speak as seconder?
Thank you. Yes, the proximity to the river and the effluent from 100 cattle so close to that really is going to be an issue. There's not really any way that the property owner or potential property owner can abate the refuse going into the water. So for that reason, I'd say no.
Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion for refusal? I'll go back to you, Councillor Gaffney, as the mover. Would you like to sum up?
I'll just mention a comment from Agriculture Victoria, which considers that the proposed use and development of a dwelling on the land does not meet the strategic objectives of the Indigo planning scheme.
Thank you, Councillor Gaffney. I'll put the motion for refusal of this item. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item 12 is community and economic development, and item 12.1 is the council grants guidelines and assessment criteria annual review. The item is for decision. The recommendation is that council 1 adopts the guidelines and assessment criteria as attached to this report for the following grant streams for 2023-2024, being A, community grants, 2, B, events grants, and C, Get Active Indigo grants. And number 2, appoints councillor representatives and substitute representatives in a non-voting capacity to each of the following grant assessment panels. A, the events grants, and the councillor representative will be Peter Croucher. You're happy with that, Peter? The substitute representative councillor would be Bernard Gaffney. Happy with that, Councillor Gaffney? And B, Get Active Indigo grants, the councillor representative would be Councillor Emerick Tysell, with the substitute representative being Councillor Roberta Horn. Am I both happy with that? And number 3, adopts the amended grants governance policy as attached to this report. Can I have someone to move that? Moved Councillor Croucher, seconded Councillor Tysell. Councillor Croucher.
Yes, I'd like It's recognised that the grants program really needs to be continually revised and looked at. It's a very important part of our communities to have, and it's very important to have such a variety of different grants from which we can consider and apply for according to the events and activities with which they may need to organise.
Thank you, Councillor Croucher. Councillor Tyson, would you like to speak as seconder?
Yeah, it's great to see that we've been proactive in our grant space, and this really does help with our governance and how we deal with handing out our money and making sure that the people on these panels are unbiased and can do so fairly.
Thank you, Councillor Tyson. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Horn.
I'd just like to make a comment. I would prefer to see a wider range of organisations or individuals represented on the panel, in the fact that there are 3 health-related panellists. I understand that their role is to advise and on the grants being put forward. But I just feel that it would be better to have more of a community representation in this process. Yeah, thank you.
Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Gaffney?
Yes, I'm a bit the same way as Councillor Horn, that the amount of expertise on event grants come from health services like Beechworth Health, Indigo North Health, and Yakandanda Health and Sports Northeast. I think I'd like to see more of people across the general community.
Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? If not, I'll go back to Councillor Croucher as the mover. Would you like to sum up?
I haven't got much more to sum up, but I just again stipulate that our communities really like these grants. Believe me, I'm out in them and I hear different conversations of how valuable these grants are.
I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Councillors will now move to the item of urgent late business that we entered into the agenda. I'll just give you a moment to get your copies of that item. The title of the item is the Chiltern Destination Place-Based Funding Application. The item is for decision. The recommendation is that Council 1 proceed with supporting a Tourism Northeast application for the Rutherglen Silo Precinct and Community Arts Hub project in the 2023-24 round of the Federal Government's Growing Regions Program as per the Council Resolution 27th of June 2023. And 2, does not submit an EOI with the Federal Government's Growing Regions Program or the Chiltern Destination Place-Based project in 2023-24. And number 3, continue to work on the Chiltern Destination Place-Based concept, including further revision of the project scope and costings with a view to progressing the project through future funding applications. Do I have somebody to move that item? Moved Councillor Croucher, seconded Councillor Shepherd. Councillor Croucher.
Yes, this has come as an emergency thing. And I think the report itself tells us quite a lot. It says that multiple projects in close proximity to each other would not be considered favourably. And the administration team strongly advises that projects proponents should focus on one application rather than applying for more than one project, which is therefore complete with one another. So therefore, we had 2 very strong ones, and the other part of the report says that the Rutherglen Silo Arts Precinct project is the stronger application, is distinctly more shovel-ready at this time. And it's very important that the report get in the recommendation that we continue to work on the Chiltern Destination Play Space concept, including further revision of the project scope and costings with a view to progressing this project through future funding applications. But at the moment, we are recommending that we go strongly for the Silo Arts project and continue to work with the Chiltern Destination project in the coming weeks.
Thank you, Councillor Croucher. Councillor Shepherd, would you like to speak as seconder? Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Gaffney?
I'd like to ask a question and either the CEO or the director could answer it. With the EOI for the Chiltern destination play space, if we were to apply through a different stream in the future, this project would come back to council.
Absolutely, it would, Councillor Croucher. Councillor Gaffney, it would come back to a future council meeting. Sorry.
CEO, can I just clarify, would it come back to a council meeting?
It would almost, well, it would certainly come back to a council meeting because any contribution from council would be above delegation and likely to be outside of a budget cycle. So in virtually all circumstances would come back here.
Thank you, CEO. That was a question. Councillor, did you have any comment to make about the item? Does any other councillor wish to speak to the item? Councillor Tyson?
Yeah, I'd just like to acknowledge that it's slightly unfortunate for the Chiltern community and broader communities that the project wasn't quite ready to be accessible for this particular funding stream. Unfortunately, council didn't have the information that they have now when it was approved, and we're unaware that they couldn't put two potentially similar projects up within the one municipality. Thank you.
Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? I'll go back to you, Councillor Croucher, as the mover. Would you like to sum up? Okay, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Move now to infrastructure services, and item 13.1 is the Community Sustainability Grant Program Guidelines Annual Review 2023-24. The item is for decision. The recommendation is that Council 1 adopts the guidelines for the Community Sustainability Grants Program 2023-24 and delegates the Chief Executive Officer to appoint 2 representatives from the Indigo Environment Advisory Committee to be on the Community Sustainability Grants Assessment Panel. Do I have someone to move that motion? Moved Councillor Tyson, seconded Councillor Shepherd. Councillor Tyson?
Yeah, it's great to see council being proactive in the space again. This is a necessary measure. It puts 2 representatives from a very dynamic and diverse council-based organisation into that program, and they come with them a wealth of knowledge, and I look forward to hearing their feedback once they're installed. Thank you.
Councillor Shepherd, would you like to speak as seconder?
So every year we put in the budget around $20,000, and we've got $20,850 in the 23-24 budget. And so far that we've supported 23 projects across the Shire, which includes 7 installations of solar PV and/or battery systems, 8 energy efficiency projects, and 6 sustainability events. But just to let people know that we won't be supporting sustainability events anymore. The events are going to go into the events grants. So it's going to be for sustainability for things, not events. And one great thing that we can now talk about is what's the name of that program that we've now got that we can Causal. I remembered it. Causal. You can go to Causal yourself and see the projects that have happened and little photos and a summary of what's happened with those projects. So that's a great innovation. So that's a good part of your department now. So great funding opportunity.
Thank you, Councillor Shepherd. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Croucher.
Yeah, I'd just like to sort of ask a question here. It's true that our other 4 grants program are together. Is that correct, Sally? That we're going to actually put them out at a similar time. In the past, like the events one might have been early in the year and another one might have been mid, but now aren't we doing the 4 of them in a similar time within all put together? Is that correct? Our ordinary grants program.
Sorry, you'll have to turn your microphone on.
Oh, it's at a different time, is it?
Yes, it's later in the year,
Okay.
as we've only just awarded recently this last year.
Okay, I see. So would it
Program.
be our aim to put them in at a similar time? Is that correct, or?
I think we're working towards it,
Yeah, yes,
bringing
for sure.
together the events in this.
I only ask that is because the sustainability grants program, when do we, Ian, do you think we'll be having that one at a different time of the year, completely away from this?
Yeah, no, we're harmonising it with the other grants program, so
Yep.
the timeframes are set out. I think not too much detail in the, yeah, I'm sure we've got the timeframes in the report itself. Can't find it readily. The guidelines are general, but yeah, going out in August
Yep.
with a view to come back to council before the end of the calendar
Excellent.
year.
I think that's a good idea because our community start, this is our grants time of the year, 3 months, and we've got an opportunity for all of these sort of things. Thank you.
Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? I'll go back to councillor Tyson as the mover if you'd like to sum up.
No further comments, thank you.
I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item 13.2 is tender recommendation for contract 23/6341 supply of mobile maintenance services on council's plant equipment and fleet, I think not feet. The item is for decision. The recommendation is that Council 1 awards the contract 23/6341 to Spanners and Sparks Supply of mobile maintenance services on council's plant, equipment and fleet for an initial 1-year term and with 2 optional extensions, each of a further 2 years, each extension being at the option of council. 2 notes the value of works delivered under the contract varies annually, typically between $300,000 and $450,000 per annum, and 3 authorises the Chief Executive Officer to sign and seal the contract documents. Do I have somebody to move that motion? Moved Councillor Shepherd, seconded Councillor Gaffney. Councillor Shepherd.
Spanner and Sparks is the incumbent, isn't that a great name? Is the incumbent contractor and has demonstrated the experience of having been with the Shire for several years and provides evidence of being able to keep up with the maintenance demands. On this basis and based on the rates, overall costings and evaluations indicated, they were the better choice for the position, and the tender panel recommends that Spanner and Sparks submission represents best outcome for council for a period of 12 months until an alternate in-house model can be assessed.
Thank you, Councillor Shepherd. Councillor Gaffney.
In 2017, alternate models were assessed but deemed unsuitable at the time. Those options were the original equipment manufacturer, but it was found to be more expensive and increased downtime to get repairs done. And B, in-house staff, initially thought to be just as expensive with consideration to set up costs and paying staff overtime. This has gone through a thorough procurement process. And on speaking to the director, he's very happy with Spanners and Sparks.
Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Horn?
Could I just ask a question, please?
Yes.
It was a long time between reviewing this from 2017. Is that normal for such a length of time?
Director Ian Ellett?
Yeah, thank you. Sorry if that was a little bit confusing there. So council considered this in 2018. So it was just prior to it last going to tender that it was reviewed. And so the council awarded a contract in 2018 and that one has just come to an end. So yeah, we're 5 years on. So there was a review done just prior to the last tendering episode. So that's why it's back.
Thank you. Any other councillors like to speak to the motion? I'll go back to Councillor Shepherd as the mover. Would you like to sum up? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item 13.3 is tender recommendation contract number 23/6473 curbside collection services. The item is for decision. CEO?
With your indulgence, Madam Chair, there is a recommendation before you in the papers, and I'd like to suggest that one of the lines be reworded to the avoidance of any doubt. And just to clarify, this tender is a unit rate tender. And so the bidders have provided unit rates which allow council then to make decisions anywhere along the 10-year spectrum about their own service levels, as well as adjusting to legislative changes that are down the track. So just for, again, the avoidance of doubt, I'd like to suggest, subject to a council moving this, that dot point 3 just be reworded slightly, and we've circulated this and tabled that as well. Suggested wording being that council notes that the awarding of this contract does not change current service levels in the short term, and that a further report will be presented to council at a later date to consider any service level changes.
Thank you, CEO. Councillor Shepherd, you'd move that recommendation with the suggested wording the CEO has just mentioned, and Councillor Tyson, you'd like to second that. Councillor Shepherd, would you like to speak to motion?
I don't think it changes it all that much. I think it just really is clearer that there's nothing is going to change in this particular recommendation. That's something that will come to us later to discuss. Anything around changing of sizes or whether BOGO goes to the rural, that's something we'll decide later on. So, yep, I think it just makes it a bit clearer.
Councillor Tyson, would you like to speak as seconder?
Thank you. It's been a very long and complex process involving many rural councils. This process will actually lock in our costings going forward for the next 10 years.
Is he speaking to the?
Oh, I'm not talking to. No,
To
that's
the
the
motion.
Sorry, to be clear, the motion has been moved, and that is the entire motion because there was not one that was on the table.
Seconder.
That's right. Yes.
This motion.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So to avoid any confusion, the recommendation that we had here,
Yeah.
we have moved the entire recommendation with the wording changes that the CEO has given.
So I just spoke to the change in the motion.
Okay, let's go back, and Councillor Shepherd, you can speak as mover of the motion.
Okay, so we've had Cleanaway with Albury City, the councils of Albury City, Wodonga Federation, Indigo and Greater Hume in a collaborative agreement to provide curbside municipal solid waste recycling and food and garden organics, BOGO, collection services since 2012. And it's due to expire on 30th of June 2024. So Ian and his team have been working very hard with a regional curbside collection working group, which was established in 2019, made up of representatives from the 5 participating councils, along with, we've got a few more, Berrigan, Edward River Council and Leeton Council, who had elected to join the collaboration with the aim to secure curbside waste services, with Albury City Council taking the lead. Cleanaway has provided a well-considered response and provided very competitive pricing, with the costs being slightly less than current expenditure for the comparable services, if all alternative cost-reducing options are taken up. So there are a number of options for the consideration that were put forward in Cleanaway's tender response, and each of the 4 alternate options are being recommended to be taken up, and they are the utilisation of existing fleet with rolling replacement, utilisation of existing mobile garbage bins, council to be direct billed for landfill disposal costs, council to be billed on actual tonnages amount, and this arrangement is in place in the current contract. The annual required budget for provision of curbside collection services is currently a little under $3 million per annum, and this is expected to be very similar to costs under the new contract in the initial year before glass is introduced.
Thank you, Councillor Shepherd. Councillor Tyson, would you like to speak as seconder?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to sort of retrospect this a little bit, that the contract that we currently have, we were once again leaders in their communities, and we actually put in our organics collection, which is something that many councils around us still don't have and are still not recommending. And along with that, we have an exceptionally low rate of contamination, which just demonstrates how well our communities have taken on board what we provided. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tyson. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Gaffney?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a contract worth 29.2 million over 10 years. I remember when the bins changed and there was increase in cost because there were extra bins, and the council at that stage called community meetings. They were at Tangambalanga, Beechworth, Rutherglen, and they were certainly noisy and very rowdy. I'm quite pleased that now at this stage there is no change, but if there's going to be a change in the number of bins that people have to take, whether they want to or whether they don't, that there'll be transparency and certainly community consultation. We don't want to force people to take bins for which they have to pay for but never use. And there are bins in this Shire that people pay for but never use. I see that on page 50, it talks about implementation of the glass bin service required within Victoria can be readily delayed until 2027 in alignment with Wodonga Council. I'm not quite sure why a small rural council like Indigo is aligned with Wodonga Council, which is a regional council. But just as long as we have transparency and community consultation, particularly if it's going to cost them more money.
Thank you, Councillor Gaffney. Councillor Croucher?
Yes, I just noticed in the recommendation, the first 5 are notes, so that we note that we're required that Victoria's waste and recycling system. We note that the specifications for the different curbside collections. We note that there's a further report will be presented to council at a later date. We note the recommendations of the regional tender evaluation team, and we note that the estimated cost of the service is going to be approximately 29.2 million. And number 6 is where we actually have awarded the contract to Cleanaway, and number 7 authorises the CEO to sign and seal the contract documents. So in my opinion, that recommendation, we're noting a lot of things, but we've actually awarded and authorised. And I certainly do agree with Councillor Gaffney that we do need to have a lot of community consultation with this when it comes in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Croucher. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? I'll go back to Councillor Shepherd as the mover.
I note in the report that it does say under community engagement that there would be an opportunity to speak to the community before we change anything. So I think you can allay your concerns. It's in the report, so it will happen. Yeah, I'd just like to say I think the last 10 years with Cleanaway has been great, and I look forward to us continuing. I think as a Shire we're quite we stand out as doing a great job with especially our organics and our very low contamination rates, and I look forward to another 10 years of good service from Cleanaway.
Thank you, Councillor Shepherd. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. I just think it's really important to note that the confidence that council has in the process that we've undertaken, and to reflect back to the community that we understand that waste is a really important service that we provide. And with the unanimous vote tonight, I think it's really clear that council is very supportive of the process that's been undertaken. I'm really confident that this will be a good service going forward. Move now to item 14, executive management. And item 14.1 is an update the instrument of appointment and authorisation under the Environment Protection Act 2017. The item is for decision. The recommendation is that Council 1 appoints and authorises the members of council staff referred to in the instrument attached as set out in the instrument, and 2 notes that the instrument comes into force immediately upon resolution of council and remains in force until council determines to vary or revoke it. Can I have somebody to move that? Moved Councillor Croucher, seconded Councillor Tyson. Councillor Croucher, did you wish to speak to it? Councillor Tyson? If there are no other councillors that wish to speak to it, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item 14.2 is contract awarded under CEO delegation for June 2023. The item is for information and there were no contracts awarded by the CEO under delegation for the month of June. 14.3 is informal meetings of councillors' records. The item is for decision. The recommendation is that council accepts the attached informal meetings of councillor records. Moved Councillor Gaffney, seconded Councillor Tyson. You wish to speak to the motion? No councillor wish to speak to the motion. I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item 14.4 is the advisory committee minutes. The item is for decision. The recommendation is that council receives the attached unconfirmed meeting minutes for the following advisory committees and endorses the officer recommendations. A, the Indigo Environment Advisory Committee, B, the Indigo Access Advisory Committee, C, the Finance Committee, and D, Indigo Shire Cultural Heritage Advisory Committee. Do I have someone to move that? Councillor Shepherd. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Horn. Councillor Shepherd, do you wish to speak to the motion?
I do. I just wanted to raise, as chair of the Cultural Heritage Committee, Ashley Giffney, who is the acting manager, gave us a report on a cross-shire program that they've been doing. And I just wonder if you don't mind me just giving you a quick rundown on what she said, because it's the sort of thing we've been discussing for a while and it's been happening, where the Cultural Heritage Collections Assistance Program was designed to allocate a single 5-day block of Burke Museum assistance to each participating museum/Athenaeum in a 2-month interval, with 6 projects from 6 different organisations set to be completed each year. Our aim was to provide comprehensive support to a diversity of groups, enabling them to expand their collection and curatorial programs. An expression of interest was promoted and 10 organisations responded. The program was implemented at Chiltern Athenaeum, Beechworth RSL, but it was COVID put a stop on it all. And one of the key findings was that the allocation of a 5-day block was not sufficient to cater to the diverse needs of the community groups. It was also noted that many organisations struggled to follow through with their projects, often due to technology, training and flexibility challenges. And so they've doing a different cross-shire program, and they began trialling a program that supports a museum/Athenaeum on a bi-weekly basis over 10 weeks. This approach has allowed for a bespoke strategy to be developed, tailored to the specific needs of the museum Athenaeum, and it's helped the Burke Museum team to understand that every organisation is at a different stage and the program needs to be built around delivering tailored solutions that cater towards long-term goals. So it's successfully rolled out at Chiltern Athenaeum and Warragee Landcare, with plans for Rutherglen Historic Society and Stanley Athenaeum in the early part of next year. This program has been received very positively by these groups.
Thank you, Councillor Shepherd. Councillor Horn, would you like to speak as seconder? No? Would any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Croucher?
I'm just a member of the Indigo Community Access Advisory Committee. I don't know whether this is a recommendation we need to put in, but we've changed our meeting times from once a month and we're going on trial to having our meetings every 6 weeks now. And I don't know whether it needs to be in that or not, but anyway, I just thought I'd mention.
Thank you, Councillor Croucher. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? If not, I'll go back to Councillor Shepherd. Did you wish to sum up? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item 15 is notice of motion. There are none. Item 16 is councillors' reports. Do any councillors wish to make a report to the meeting? No. Item 16.1 is the Mayor's Diary for June 2023. Item 17 is the Decisions Register, which is for information. Item 18 is general business. Does anybody have any general business for the council meeting? Councillor Tyson?
Yeah, I'd just like to note that we currently have some work going on in planning, town planning and future planning really. And I'd like hopefully for our part of that to be some planning around having people being able to stay in their homes and aging well in their own place, which is really applicable to our rural communities. I mean, people who live in town can build a granny flat or potentially subdivide on a very small allotment. And that's okay because they're staying there, but we can't seem to get around the 40-hectare rule for rural municipalities where we have countries. We have farmers who can't stay where they are. The children can't look after them and they can't move in with them. They can't cohabitate, but in a separate house. So I think it's something that we need to come up with a strategy for so that our rural communities aren't losing valuable older members of their communities who really passionately want to stay there. So anyway, that's just a bit of feedback.
Thank you, councillor Tysell. Is there any other general business for the council meeting? Councillor Horn?
I would just like to ask if there's any further information on Main Street, Rutherglen from Rural Roads Victoria, please.
Director Ian Ellett, would you like to answer that?
Thank you, councillor, for the question. No, I haven't heard any update from Regional Roads on Main Street Rutherglen, so we'll certainly keep you informed if anything comes to hand.
Thank you.
Is there any other general business for the meeting? No? Item 19 is confidential. So section 66 of the Local Government Act states a council or delegated committee must keep a meeting open to the public unless the council or delegated committee considers it necessary to close the meeting to the public because of a circumstance specified in subsection 2 applies. The circumstances are the meeting is to consider confidential information as defined in section 3 of the Local Government Act for security reasons, or it is necessary to do so to enable the meeting to proceed in an orderly manner. So I'm just about to ask for a motion to go into confidential, but councillor Horn, while we've still got the meeting open to public, this next item for consideration is the one that you've declared a conflict of interest for. So if you would like to declare your conflict now while we're still in an open meeting.
Yes, I declare a conflict of interest and I'll be leaving the meeting now.
Okay, thank you, councillor Horn. So councillors, I'd like a motion that council meeting be closed to the public in accordance with section 66 of the Local Government Act 2020. Moved councillor Gaffney, seconded councillor Tysell. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. We'll just wait to get I'll read out the following statement as part of the decision that was just made. No appointment has been made and council will continue to seek a suitable committee applicant, preferably a younger person under 25. So we've returned to public session after that confidential session now, and I'd like to declare the meeting closed, with the next meeting to be held on Tuesday, the 29th of August, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. Thank you.